when we think about life in Tesla, most of us watching this are Tesla investors. Working in Tesla can sometimes come across as very mythologized, like this is this amazing dream place to work at. It can be, but as Farzad mentioned, there is a price to pay for changing the world at times. So when we, as investors, we keep on tweeting on Twitter, when is Giga Berlin going to hit 4K, 5K per week production? But it's people like Farzad, whether it's in distribution or our friends or teammates in manufacturing, who are there, and you finally see these highs. I see this picture like 4,000 Model Ys built per week in Giga Berlin, or Giga Shanghai making its 1 million car. But these are a moment of high. Behind all these moments of highs, there were a lot of ups and downs. Farzad, what do most of us don't see behind this story? What were some of the sacrifices or the creative problem solving we needed to make to get to these places?
Oh, dude. So you know what image comes to mind? I remember very vividly. I remember this very, very vividly. So we were in the middle of, this is an example of kind of giving the audience an idea of what it's like. I remember we were in the middle of the Model 3 ramp, and they were finally hitting 5,000 per week, which was that crazy threshold to be profitable, right? And then we're cranking on to 10,000 per week. But what happened during that time? There was a huge influx of cars in the fleet. There were a lot more cars coming out, a lot more cars that were being shipped to dealerships, that were being shipped to service centers. And we went from shipping, what is it, like 80,000, 90,000 cars per year, 60,000 to 500,000 by 2020. So a 5Xing, more than a 5X in a very short period of time. You think about all the parts that are involved in that, all the additional cars that are out there, driving around in the snow and ice, getting into accidents. Somebody complaining about their trim being misaligned, somebody complaining about their thing being misaligned, the freaking maybe some faults in the chairs or the seats that we had to get swapped out. Just a bunch of stuff that had to be dealt with through that ramp. And the distribution network at that time when I was there was struggling to keep up. And the facility that I was at basically went from, during that time period, from say like 1 or 2 days of backlog, we called it. What was it? It was 17,000 lines on like 1,500. It was like 15, 16 days behind, essentially. 16, 15. So when you read all those articles of like, there's, I'm having an issue getting my part, sorry. I personally say sorry. It was our team. We were struggling to keep up, Elon's lawyers, don't come knocking on my door. This is public information, okay? Watch it. No. But what happened is during that time, our team was literally me and like 2 other people were trying to solve this problem. We were trying to solve this problem. And really the only way to solve this at the time wasn't to just throw up a new building in that day, because you can't throw up a new building in a day. How do we get more parts out of the same footprint while there's an onslaught of trailers coming in, showing up randomly, that you have to make room for in a warehouse that's already full and probably understaffed by like 60%. And our goal was, we need to get back down to 1 day behind. That was our goal. And I remember very vividly, I was talking to my boss and one of the engineers that was there to help us. And we were trying out new things constantly. And Greg kept saying, not good enough, not good enough. 30% improvement, not good enough. 40% improvement, not good enough. We would try something else. We would go back to 0% improvement because it was a fatal error we had, and we had to stay late and redo it. And then the next day, we're behind again, not good enough. Again and again and again for days, weeks at a time. And I remember very vividly taking my hat, because it was after like the 17th time I was told not good enough. And I took my hat and I fucking slammed it on the floor and I walked out. I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I'm like literally my brain's about to explode. I cannot think of any other solutions. I can't push any harder than I've never pushed this far in my life. And you're telling me to push harder. I don't know how. And so at that point, I almost was ready to give up. So I went outside. It was in the winter. It was like 20 degrees outside Fahrenheit. It's just freezing cold. Freaking stand there. I just get some freaking cold air in my head. I go back in. Okay, very good. I relax. I go in. I sit in front of my computer. I'm like, okay, so what is the fatal flaw here? What's the problem? And then we started to kind of figure out that there was a problem with how the product was flowing to the outbound floor, to where we weren't timing up things in the most optimal way. And then once we started figuring that out, everything changed. And then we went from being 17 days behind to our facility being the best in class by like 2 to 3x. Okay. And we were so caught up and everybody else was screwed. And then we had to go to their buildings and help them out, essentially. And this is not because they're bad. It's because it was just such a difficult thing to handle, right? And we're just lucky enough to have cracked the code, because we sort of had the right talent mix and the right sort of drive in the team that we had at that time. It's just, and honestly, it's because we were pushed against a wall and we had rocks being thrown at us and there was a fire above us and freaking spikes from below. And so it forced us to get really, really creative. And so, and then I remember super vividly, to celebrate, we went out to a bowling alley, you know, when we finally cracked the code and we started pushing all our knowledge out to everybody. And we're all drunk and hugging and kissing and we're celebrating all together. And as a team that overcame this ridiculous thing. And that's very similar to that picture you sent for me, is that sort of memory. But the amount of pain I had to go through to experience that, it was insane. It was almost to the point where I'm like, why? I got to the point where I don't even know why I'm doing this. Like, is this really worth it? And it was. Looking back, it was. Because we won. Because we won, right? That's very important, because we won. And I think that made the feeling a very, very positive one. If we had failed, I don't know if I can say the same. I probably, after enough reflection, I would have said, well, there were some key learning lessons there, but the feeling would be a lot less rosy. It would be a lot more, I don't know, maybe more dark. But it truly felt like we overcame something that felt impossible. And that wasn't the only time. We did that, I don't know, probably dozens, 14, 16 times where we had that sort of level of intensity that we had to get through. And so you think about when you do the first one, it feels incredible. You do the second one, then you feel like you have something going on. You do the third one, then it's addicting, because you know you can go and change people's lives. Literally, the people that are working 80, 100-hour weeks, you can put in a solution that's going to literally change their lives. They're going to be able to see their family again. And it's because of something you helped build.